I keep telling people it is very difficult to convert those who are already converted, people who are on the fringes, either side. There's no way you can maybe try reason them, telling them, but it is very difficult. We have to accept that fact. So our job is to ensure that those in the middle do not veer towards the extremes.
Rakesh Dubbudu, founder and CEO of India's fact-checking website Factly, knows a thing or two about how to tackle misinformation and serve a significant silent population, those who don't comment on social media, yet are looking for facts rather than opinions. How does Factly maintain public trust in its fact-checking operations, particularly when dealing with politically sensitive topics in India? What is the impact of technology on fact-checking? What signals does DeepSeek's send to the media industry? We discuss these and many more technology, storytelling, and misinformation-related issues in this episode of AI Fluent. Let's dive in. Why did you decide to leave your previous job and launch your startup Factly? What was the major driving force behind it?
So I was in the IT industry, but since my formative and child years, I was always interested in policy, politics, and so I was also at the same time in 2005, around 2005, the Indian government, the Indian Parliament passed this law where a citizen can seek information from the government, you can file a request. So I kind of championed that legislation when it was new, telling people, campaigning for it. So in some ways, it was the urge for getting more and more information to the public was the driving force. And eventually, once I realized that okay, let me do something cool, something that I like. I quit my job and was exploring what to do. I mean, so it started more. I wouldn't say a blog, but it started as a platform to provide a lot of credible, authentic information to the public. So officially we began in 2016, but even a year before that, we started doing on and off infographics, some data, some videos, so on and so forth. The primary driver was, of course, making information and data more meaningful to the public. That was a larger canvas. Within that larger canvas, we started doing quite a few things. So internet was becoming cheaper, smartphones were becoming cheaper, and suddenly in a country like India, which has a very different digital trajectory compared to the West, for a significant section of the population, their first brush with technology is a smartphone. So this has given rise to a lot of issues and problems in India of proliferation of misinformation and fake news. That's when we decided that we will also do fact checking as part of Factly.
Let me ask you a provocative question. Do people in a modern day India actually care about facts?
I would definitely say yes, but the degree to which they care about facts will depend on a lot of other factors. So I would say one of the factors could be your own ideological leaning. So for instance, if there is some news that is to your liking or liking to your ideology, you'll believe it. You need facts then. But something that is against you, you may not. So I would say people do care about facts, but it is not a universally accepted truth. Varying degrees of acceptance, not just among people in all the time, but also in terms of how they place those facts in their ideological spectrum. So I do think we care about facts, but it is not uniform all the time. So even for a single individual, he might sometimes be very open to facts and be welcoming. But at the other time, he might say, this is all propaganda. So both can work at the same time.
Yeah, because even it's not only goes to India, it goes to the whole world. Because a lot of my friends, journalists who work in fact checking elsewhere in the world, they sometimes, feel so disillusioned because the way the propaganda spreads, the way the misinformation spreads, they understand that people really do not care about facts. People care to some sort of information which will kind of prove that they are right. That's it.
Exactly.
But you have hope, right? Otherwise, why would you do Factly?
No, I do. No, I do. I mean, see, it is very easy to get defeatist and say, nothing is working. Why are we even doing this? So a lot of our conversations on social media, on etc., dominated by people who are very vocal. So people who are at extremes, at fringes, who are very vocal, who keep on talking about things, keep on commenting about things. But we also need to realize, not just in India, but across the world, I believe there is a significant section of the population who may be silent, but at the same time, they're significant. They are not deeply wedded to any ideology. Could be right, left, center, any ideology. They're not deeply wedded to it. So for them, they take things on face value. They need information. They need all this. I believe for that significant section of the population, our work is very important. And the moment we feel that it's all done and people on the extremes are just dominating, I think we lose that significance. So I keep telling people, it is very difficult to convert those who are already converted, people who are on the fringes, either side. There's no way you can maybe try reason them, telling them, but it is very difficult. We have to accept that fact. So our job is to ensure that those in the middle do not veer towards the extremes, so that they stay in the middle and try to reason, be rational, and in fact bring more and more people to the middle rather than go to the extremes. So I think our work is very important, and we place our work in that spectrum rather than trying to worry about people on the extremes and say, why are we even doing this?
How do you know, though, that your audience needs you, not any other fact-checking resource, but you? So do you have any sort of feedback from your audience?
So I wouldn't say that we are the only ones needed. Now, obviously, each of us, different fact checkers have different strengths. We obviously track a lot of our comments on social media, on our videos, on our YouTube videos, on our Instagram. We track a lot of comments. Of course, is there hate and trolling? Of course, there is. I won't say everything. There are bits and bats. We see a lot of people coming back and saying, "I did not know this. I did not realize this. Sorry, you told me." So in fact, there are two, three strengths that Factly has. One is we have an expertise in fact checking data and policy. So we do a lot of data and policy related fact checking when they go viral, and these are very deeply reported stories. You can't, unlike a social media post, which an image or a video. So we specialize in that. Secondly, we do a lot of work on financial scams. In India, financial scams is a huge menace with limited digital literacy, and people prone to the scams, and so we do a lot of these videos. And even today, a video which we may have done 2 years ago, there are people commenting and saying, "I saw this video and I was saved. I did not send money to this scamster." So we track comments, we track emails that we get. So all of this gives us a sense that it is not as if everything it's done. We are still needed, and there are people who value this work, and in fact, not just value, they're actually helping them in real.
Who is your audience? So can you give us a portrait of your loyal reader?
Mostly, whatever data we track on various platforms tells us that the age group is typically between 18 and 35, 36. This is the age group typically. Obviously, more men than women. We would have ideally liked more women, but more men than women. So this is typically the age group that we see, our audience come from.
So you're reaching the Gen Z audiences as well, right?
Could be, yes, a mix of Gen Z and some of who are, middle aged.
Do you have Gen Z journalists in your newsroom?
Our average age is very less. I think, the entire organization, the average age will be around 27, 28. So though we are not technically Gen Z, I think we do have, we constantly innovate on formats. So we, in fact, we are one of the, at least within the fact checking ecosystem, ours is one of the largest Instagram pages. We have about 350K followers. Of those who do fact checking in India, ours is the best page. On YouTube, we have around 160K followers. So I would say there is significantly good following on social media, and we do innovate and follow. I know sometimes it could get very routine, and because you're saying the same thing again and again. So very frequently, I wouldn't say every month, but every quarter, every 6 months, we look at what can be innovated, what can be changed in the formats, and try and see what other ways and means of reaching out to this kind of audience who need information.
Yeah, exactly. Because they are mainly, I think, consuming audio and video rather than text. So you need to.
Exactly.
Rakesh, how would you describe the atmosphere and the mood in the media industry in India now? Some of my Indian journalist friends have left the profession, saying it's becoming increasingly censored.
Yes, see, I would say, do you say there is a free? I think there is a shift from the traditional media industry, which is print, which is this thing, to digital. So we have a lot more people who were anti-establishment on the digital side than on the print and typical what you call as old school mainstream media. So we have a lot of digital media journalists who are anti-establishment, who question things. I think there is a fundamental shift in that I think some in the media industry are not able to realize. The fundamental shift being that people are, there are two extremes here. One is there are people who want the short form content both for entertainment as well as other things. They're extremely short on patience. They just need something to happen in 60 seconds. At the same time, there are people who are immensely keen about long form content. They need to get details, everything. So you see that in a country like US, TikTok as well as long form podcasts are thriving. Both are thriving. I mean, they're able to impact, and the same thing happened in India as well. So now a lot of political leaders and others are going to podcasts, having interviews with them, realizing that this is becoming a huge trend. So that is shifting. And secondly, see, there have been some cases of where certain journalists have been targeted, journalism agencies have been targeted. Those cases have been there. I won't deny that they are there. But I also think this is also a result of how the business models of media has evolved more than anything. Because the business model of news has evolved, and they are not able to find an alternate business model which is owned by industrialists and others. Eventually, this had to happen. I think this was anyway bound to happen, if not today, tomorrow. So it'll always be, in some ways it may be pro-ruling party at the center. In some states, for example, if a regional party is in power, most of the media notos with the regional party, that they write only positive things about the regional party. So across the country, we are seeing this. I think there are two things happening. One is obviously a pro-establishment stance of media, and second is the business model itself. I think the business model also has to play an important role.
What about other fact-checking websites? So do you collaborate? Are you friends? Are you competitors? Are you enemies? What kind of relationship do you have with each other?
I think it's a mix of everything. So are we competitors? In some ways, yes, because we're trying to get the same kind of audience, trying to get the same facts together. But we also realize that we are a small ecosystem. You can't keep fighting each other. So at least in the recent past, last few years, we've realized that we need to collaborate with each other. So there are quite a few coalitions that fact checkers are part of. So for instance, there is a collaboration called the Misinformation Combat Alliance, called the MCA, which is think of it like an industry body of fact checkers in India. So about 12 different organizations are part of it. We collaborate, we talk to tech companies as MCA. The MCA also runs something called as the DeepSeek's analysis unit, especially set up during our recent federal elections, and it is continuing so far. There is also another collaborative initiative called Project Shakti, where a lot of mainstream publishers and others came together during elections, and which is also continuing now for the Delhi and subsequent elections. Collaboration has definitely improved in the last couple of years, while competition stays, because at the end of the day, you're all fighting for the same dollar, same kind of audience. That kind of stays, but there is an increasing realization that there is collaboration needed, because it's a very small ecosystem, and you cannot sometimes fight things or put across your point of view, especially about the ecosystem, if you're just independent.
Is there anything your competitors do in terms of using Gen AI to either be more creative storytellers or redesign a business model? Anything they do you feel you could learn from, or even maybe think, damn, why didn't we come up first with this idea?
So some of the things that other fact checkers do, some do very deep reporting on trends in AI, how AI avatars are taking over and wreaking havoc in some places, or AI avatars becoming doctors and giving the wrong advice. So some deep long form stories, I think we get inspired. We wish to do that in the future. But on our own front, we are doing a lot on the AI front. And so we've realized a few years ago that depending on one tech platform or having your business model built on tech platforms is going to be one day very dicey, and it is not advisable. So we began plans for diversification a couple of years ago, and we have, unlike other fact checkers in India, and we have a very active technology wing. So we are in fact one of the ones across the globe also where we do a lot of technology actively. Again, within the realm of credible information and providing authentic information to people. So we've built a couple of products. One of them is already in the market for subscriptions, which we've started and some early good traction. The other one is going to be launched sometime in the next month. So both in some ways, someone is a data product where AI also plays a role. The other is a pure AI product where we are trying to build a research platform for. We are curating a lot of important databases ourselves that could be very useful to not just journalists and fact checkers, but across the spectrum of people who ever need official government information. We realized pretty soon that our strength is building technology in this realm. So we focused on some of the ideas that we had, and we developed those ideas into products.
Let us talk about DeepSeek, a talk of the town. A Chinese AI startup, DeepSeek, caused a significant drop in the US stock market and made Nvidia lose substantial stock value in one day, though it had almost fully recovered, so within a couple of days. Have you played with it? What are your thoughts?
Oh, yes, we did. So initially, we did some very initial research, of course. It's still testing as we speak. So some of the initial comments we have about DeepSeek and what it's doing is we believe it signals a shift in AI development across the globe, not just for Chinese. So till DeepSeek came onto the scene, the entire AI spectrum was on the thing that bigger is always better. In the sense, the bigger your model is, the bigger your training data set is, bigger the better, because then the model will be more robust, more comprehensive, less hallucination. So DeepSeek kind of shifted that whole conversation to a more nuanced approach of how can we do more with less. In the sense, you don't have to be a very big model, spending a lot of money, training billions and billions of parameters. You can still be small, but how can be more effective? So I think what will also happen is, as a result of the smaller teams and startups could create more sophisticated AI. I think especially more than the foundational models, we believe a lot of domain-specific AI applications will come that will not have to match the massive infrastructure of these big tech companies. So you will see that this may serve as an inspiration for a lot of such innovation that we see. So there will also be a lot of research on the efficiency front. So till date, a lot of the focus was on how many GPUs, how fast, how big the data center is. But I think with the DeepSeek, people will start focusing also on efficiency. So once efficiency comes in, once costs come down, and overall, I think the adoption will also accelerate. There will be healthy competition, and ultimately everybody gets to benefit.
So the cost ratio of OpenAI to DeepSeek is pretty clear, I guess, kind of clear example of what an exponential shift in cost looks like. And as a business, you need to adjust to it fast, right? Are you, as a business, evaluating which of your workflows could benefit most from lightweight on-premise AI models or even mobile-first models?
Exactly. So what we do is, so while doing the testing of the product, firstly we work with a more stable model so that you have outcomes driven. Once outcomes are set in, what we do is we divide our entire workflow into parts. So like you rightly said, which part can benefit from a model like DeepSeek? Which model can benefit from a very small model like a Gemini small model? Which part can benefit from Llama? You could have a mix of all of them. Which part benefits most? Where do you need more reasoning? Where do you need just summarization? Where do you need just re-ranking? So we, in fact, in our entire workflow, we use multiple models. So if DeepSeek fits into the bill, we definitely do it. In fact, as AI product company, not we are not building a foundation model, but we are using these foundation models to build applications on top. And we have to be very, very, very agile in terms of being able to shift from one to the other, because technology is changing so fast, and you have to optimize costs. In fact, if you see, have reduced so much in the last 18 months. So you will have to be very agile. So you cannot build something based on just one model and then say it will work for the next 2 years. It won't, because you'll quickly become obsolete. So we do that proactively, and so what we do is we use tools that can enable us to do this easily. So, for example, our product teams use something called a sport key, where even a normal person without any technical knowledge can keep changing prompts and see how the outcome is changing because of changing prompts on a massive database. And of course, the team constantly tests, of course. But the thing that we keep in mind is whenever you are making consumer-facing product out in the market where people might pay, we choose more stable models over the newer models. So once they become stable, we use them, but we tend to avoid models that are very new, have not been tested enough to go directly into production.
Do you want to know what DeepSeek tells me about you personally and factly? Did you try? Did you ask DeepSeek about yourself?
No, we did. So in fact, we asked DeepSeek what is faculty. It gave a relatively good answer. We said, what do we do? It gave a relatively good answer. Of course, with
It has a
all
very
cultural,
favorable view of you that you are very credible, well established, and almost nothing to criticize
yeah,
about you, which is
yeah, it had all very flowery language and nothing negative about it. We also asked about China, Tiananmen Square, democracy. Obviously, the answers were more of
exactly. This is what I wanted to
yeah.
ask
So
because it doesn't. Because I played with it as well, of course, but it does. As for so far as for other countries or other political leaders, it gives you actually quite on the one hand, but on the other hand, it gives you all sorts of opinions and facts. But as for China, it completely censors. It doesn't even
exactly,
gives you any information who Xi Jinping is. And
exactly.
forget about Tiananmen Square. So, from an ethical point of view, then would you want to use this kind of tool in your newsroom?
So if you are using their chat engine and their API, etc., it is bound to give you the same answers. It is bound to hide a lot of information and not give you. But you are hosting it on your own and removing those guardrails. We have seen examples of it giving relevant answers, not even hiding these answers. So it has the answers, but just because it is their chat engine, they have put in some guardrails. So I think if we have to use such models, you cannot use them as the way they provided because obviously they'll have all kinds of these limitations. So you will have to use it from another provider where these guardrails don't exist, where these cultural guardrails, not even cultural, in terms of very political guardrails don't exist. We need to see where to place it. So new models bring in newer approaches. So newer approaches will mean that existing models also will follow those newer approaches, in fact, much faster. So it is not about changing models every day, but it's about changing the approach based on what the models have to offer. So I think, so does DeepSeek have to offer anything? Like I said, yes, efficiency is a big thing. And how are they able to do reasoning with such small things? So these are lessons to learn. And I'm sure more other open source models or even closed models like OpenAI, they will quickly learn and include it in their this thing.
It's funny actually, because I think initially a lot of people and journalists as well were very scared that AI will take your job. But now it seems like AI is taking job from another AI. But you're right. It's not that it's taking job from another AI. It just in a way helps the whole ecosystem to develop faster, to become more efficient.
Yeah.
Tell me, what is the most frequent question journalists in your newsroom ask you about generative AI?
So in the newsroom, of course, there are questions around. See, if we don't encourage our own newsroom to use AI, there's no point because when we say we are developing AI products, we have to encourage internal newsroom. So one of the things that keeps coming up is what kind of roles or what kind of skills will become redundant, especially with AI. I'm not saying it's a difficult $1 million question. Of course, any skill that is very entry that that can be somehow built into a workflow and somehow automated without a lot of creativity, I think will be taken over by AI. You will still need some manual intervention. I think what will happen over time is you will see a lot of these people with very generic skills shine rather than specialists. So because for specialists, AI will have a lot of specialized skills. When I say very generic skills, you have a bit of all. You know, bit of this, bit of that, bit of that. But
And you can
so you know
connect
how to
the
manage.
dots. You can connect the
Yeah,
dots.
exactly. Let's connect the dots and manage everything. So those kinds of people are going to shine. So if you otherwise, if you're somebody who's developed your skills and a specific hard skill and will not willing to change, this will quickly be taken over. For instance, if I'm sure maybe 2 years, 3 years from now, we'll have the software which I give a script, a video will come where no manual intervention may be required with the connected workflows. I mean, a basic output where it is a basic some basic quality output. The same thing is going to happen with basic editing, basic spellings. I think people have to be more rounded, and we encourage. So we always say more than don't AI. Even in our newsroom, we are not replacing AI. We are using AI to accelerate. So don't get into this habit of when will I be replaced? If you keep thinking about that, you will eventually be replaced. So how do we increase productivity? How do you interact with AI? So you also have to learn how to interact with AI. AI is not your master. It's a tool, much like a computer, much like any other technology tool. You will have to start living with it, use it the best way possible to increase your efficiency.
What do you think is the biggest misconception of Gen AI in the context of storytelling or journalism?
I think identification of what it is good at, what it is not good at is the biggest handicap that is facing the ecosystem today. So if you ask it to write a small article on some very creative thing, it will write because it is good at it. But if you ask a specific question about a specific thing which is very deterministic, I doubt if Gen AI will give you the right answer. It might, drive you into a direction, but it might not give you the exact answer. So that differentiation between when to use AI, when not to use AI is something I think people are missing, and that's a big misconception.
And I hope you discuss it as a newsroom, right? So you discuss it constantly, how to change your ways of working with information, right? Because you have this,
Yeah.
everything develops so fast. What is the biggest challenge you face as a newsroom and you as a CEO?
So my biggest challenge is to because there is so much happening around on the technology space, it actually becomes difficult to take a pause and say when is the right time to say okay, this is when the product is ready. Because the moment you release the product, there is a new technology addition. You are in some ways you think, "Arey, I could have waited for a few more days and added this." No, that is a decision as leadership has to take when to get to market, when to use the right technology, especially in a landscape where technology is changing very, very fast. And secondly, also, how do we best utilize Gen AI and Gen AI tools within the newsroom so that on one side, people have this confidence of believing in technology and being able to differentiate when not to use it, and at the same time giving them that confidence that using them is not going to replace their roles.
You were Meta's independent fact-checking partner, like many organizations in the world, news organizations in the world. So tell me what happened after Mark Zuckerberg announced the end of fact-checking on FB in the US, but there is little doubt they will extend further. So are you still their fact-checking partner? What happened?
So the announcement made by Zuckerberg at the beginning of this month is currently limited to the US. So what will happen around the world is that we can foresee now, but currently it is only limited to the US. So our partnership continues and we are doing fact-checking as usual in India.
Listen, because I talked to some of the fact-checking partners of Meta, so they were very actually, the reaction is very strong from the news and journalism community. So some people say that his intention to get rid of fact-checkers basically subjects journalists to the same treatment they typically receive from disinformers. And Zuckerberg describes those who have worked to clean up his platforms over the past 9 years as engaging in censorship, and he blames them for destroying more trust than they've created. What would you say to this?
See, I'm not privy to what data he relied on, but Meta's own statements, there have been statements and reports which said fact checking was effective and how many pieces of content they have, at least in India. I cannot speak about the US, but in India, they've always said how many pieces of content they've rated based on our work. So in India, there have never been cases where Meta publicly or privately said this program was not working.
How do you, because they have also this kind of the issue with politicians, Meta does not allow the direct verification of statements made by political figures, meaning they post on Facebook, Instagram, or Threads, which often gain massive traction, right? They can't receive warning labels, even if they make ludicrous and polarizing false claims.
Yeah, political speech is not part of, not within the remit of Meta's fact-checking program. So who they define as politician varies slightly from country to country. But yeah, political speech made by a person running for office or a person in office is not part of the program. So you can fact check, but you cannot rate and put labels on it. Whether you want to fact check on your own is a choice that is exercised by fact checkers. If I want to write an article, nothing stops me, but I cannot use that article to use and rate content on their platform.
So from the very beginning, so when you launched Factly, so Google and Meta were your sponsors, right? Financial sponsors as well. So are they still your sponsors?
See, it is not like a sponsor. Google does not have any fact checking program, so we don't work with them in capacity. But Google does support some industry programs. So, for example, I was talking about Project Shakti, a collaborative of fact checkers and mainstream media, and this was supported by the Google News Initiative, both during the last 2024 federal elections in India and the current elections that are continuing. So, Google does have, they do some grant competition once in a while. They also helped IFCN set up the Global Fact Check Fund, where fact checkers can apply and which is administered by the IFCN. But otherwise, Google does not have any direct program. We do not get anything directly or paid anything by Google. On the Meta side, yes, we are part of the third-party fact checking program. We're a partner and we get paid for the work.
So you get some financial help from Meta.
So it is not in the form of a help. What I would say is it is payment for the services we provide to them. So it is more like a revenue than a grant.
So I'm wondering, I just want to know your opinion on this. So we are now observing how Meta, Google, and other tech giants kind of showing their allegiance to Trump's administration. They're becoming more and more partial. Don't you think that a financial connection or any connection actually with them will become a reputational liability for a news organization?
So I think, see, it depends on what do you mean by the connection. So, for example, even in the past, when Meta had its own share of controversies and bad press reports, so we've said one thing when people asked, "What are you doing for Meta? Why are you doing for Meta?" We said one thing: we have a limited role as part of the program, and we believe as long as that limited role is helping clean up the information ecosystem. I mean, it does not mean we agree everything what Meta does or the Meta's policies. But within the remit of the current program, I think some of the things that we've done in the program have been even in public statements you can see have been really effective. So without such a program, I think the scale would not have been achieved. So Meta, for instance, in the 3PFC program, they publicly said they use our articles and ratings to match it with a wider range of articles, sometimes thousands, millions, depending on how AI works. So that would not be possible if you're doing it independently. So scale is something that you get, and even if it provides some opportunity to clean up the information ecosystem, reputational harm, yes, there is always reputation. Not just today. I mean, whenever there is bad content and bad moderation on these platforms, you're always looking at reputational harm because how are you associating with a platform that poses a risk for certain sections of people. That is always there, but I believe within whatever limited that we are doing, while we reserve the right to disagree with many of the policies outside of this program apart from what financially gives us some revenue, more importantly, the scale is something that you cannot replicate as an independent organization. That is one big reason why we keep doing it, to reach so many thousands of people.
I mean, how do you see the future, so to say, of between collaborations between news industry and tech industry? Do you think it's inevitable, we need to collaborate, or if the tech industry will become more and more political and showing the allegiance to one side of the political spectrum, then how does it reflect on the news industry?
I think the entire tech ecosystem there will be cannibalization, in the sense there won't be one global policy that they'll follow across. I think it will change from geography to geography based on the local political factors, local other factors. So we'll see more of it. So they might say something in Europe, something else in the US, something else in South Asia or India, for that matter. So we might see more of that. Secondly, I'm not saying tech companies are immune. They're obviously, what happened in the US is an example of how politics can influence their decisions. And most of their decisions, at least, some of the important ones are dictated by what happens in the US and, less by what happens outside. So that risk is always there. I don't deny, but the problem is the business models, like we were discussing in the beginning as well. The news ecosystem business models have changed. Where everybody's increasingly reliant on platforms in terms of distribution to reach people, and they need content. So in some ways, it has become a relationship where you cannot wish away and say, okay, I'll exist independently unless there is money available independently, and which is not the case in most countries. So there are no strong, either independent philanthropies or people willing to fund this kind of work. So in fact, which is one reason I was telling you earlier also. As faculty, we realized this a few years ago, and we started diversifying that to decrease our reliance on these platforms, so that tomorrow, one fine day, the program stops. We shouldn't be in a situation where we are just letting stop everything and do nothing. So we're building products in this space, information products, precisely for that reason. That one uh, decrease our reliance progressively on these partnerships.
How would you, in general, how would you describe the impact technology is having on fact checking?
So twofold. So I think it you have to place it in a situation and varies from country to country. There is no one answer. Does technology help fact checking? It does. It is also true on the other side that access to technology makes it easier to create misinformation. That is also true. So I don't think there will be a situation where technology alone can solve the problem of misinformation. In fact, a lot of people have this notion that misinformation is not a problem that one single individual can solve or one single stakeholder. There are, in fact, fact checkers alone are also not adequate. So you need a multitude of efforts, both platforms, governments, academia. Platforms, of course, do play a very important role. So when that is happening, what is the role of technology? So whatever limited evidence we have seen, especially I speak from an India perspective because we're out of India and the language complexity, diversity. So technology can definitely help you accelerate your process of fact checking, but by itself cannot replace fact checking and say, you can automate everything. You can automate to an extent where, for instance, we have a browser extension AI product called the Such chatbot, which has won multiple awards, also won one of the innovation awards from Meta and other places. So all the earlier fact checks written by fact checkers around the world is part of a public database called Claim Review. So we use the database innovatively to have quick answers to claims that went viral earlier. So quite often we see, especially in a country like India, during major events, we see a lot of old claims being resurfaced again and again. So when this happens, we can use that chatbot. So it accelerates our work to a great extent. So technology can accelerate, can help fact checking in research in parts of the workflow, but cannot replace fact checking as a whole.
Rakesh, at Factly, you build your own AI tools. How do you make sure the data you feed into those tools is not biased?
So the databases we are choosing are curated. When I say curated, so we use, for instance, I'll give you examples of a few of the ones. So some of the tools we use are, one of the databases, fact check database, which is again written by all the fact checkers who are who are signatories of the International Fact Checking Network. Then the databases that we use are not something that we randomly pick up from the internet or the web. These are all official government documents. So I'm not saying all government documents or all government data is accurate. What I mean to say is there is a general level of acceptance and reliance on these documents because the discussion debate happens over them. So our databases are only those. We are not making random databases, picking up information from the web, which is unverified, which is difficult to verify and all that. So our databases are highly curated and taken from only authentic or official sources. So that way, we are at least on the database, on the data side, we are ensuring that, whatever the AI responds to is from the databases that we have built and not from the generic web.
Let's talk about trust. Trust became very scarce commodity everywhere in the world, actually, and in our industry as well. So in light of declining trust in traditional media institutions globally, how do you maintain and measure public trust in your fact-checking operations, particularly when dealing with politically sensitive topics in India?
So like I said, we keep looking at whenever we post videos or content, what kind of feedback are we getting? So if we believe that we've done something, I wouldn't say wrong, but let's say something that we should have done, we haven't done, for instance. So these signals we do keep a constant check on, and wherever there is a possibility for improvement, we do that. So sometimes we might feel that so the fact check or the video did not give enough context. So whereas the context was important for the fact check, we learn that okay, so this is something we should not do in the future. So on and so forth. We keep learning, and no, it is difficult. I don't mean to say it is easy. But one thing that keeps us going is what I keep going back to what I told you in the beginning, that the moment you feel defeatist, it's gone and you can't do anything. So I believe we are still serving a very significant section of the population, which is in the middle. And your job is to ensure there are more people in the middle than in the extremes. The more people are in the middle, the more saner society we can build. So our job is to respond to requests from these sections.
So, beyond your fact checking work, you've also done much to raise awareness of misinformation in India, right? Are there any specific patterns or emergent trends of misinformation in India, or are they quite universal?
So in the region that we operate in, see there are some universal, some very specific, region specific. So on some universal in India, for instance, whenever you have major events, elections, festivals, communal events, or disasters, these things, something that you see going viral across the country in way. Same thing goes viral in different languages, so there's no difference. So it's uniform and it's common. Something that are very regional is very specific to the political scenario in that place, cultural nuances. I wouldn't be able to put a percentage to it, but there is a good mix of universality in terms of uniformity across the country. There is also a good mix of what happens in the regional space, where in the play. For example, I live in Hyderabad. In the state we operate in, there is a good mix of what more in misinformation on the regional context. So it does not go viral in other state because it's very specific to this state.
So, can you give us some examples of this very specific regional Indian kind of way to disinform?
So, for example, in our state, and the way Telugu is the major language, what we see is sharing snippets from e-papers has been a phenomenon. So, because papers have become expensive, people are not subscribing to the print versions. What they do is pick up an e-paper and you keep sharing. E-paper sharing has been quite effective. So, what people have now learned doing is editing these e-papers and create non-existent. So everything looks genuine. That you have the logo of a news entity. There is a date. There is even a ID because everything is the same. What you're actually changing is the content within that e-paper.
They take the whole and basically put the new content.
Yeah, not the entire paper, but a clip. So they take a clip.
Okay.
So a clip from an e-paper where you can see. So each clip in the e-paper also has a lot of information, the logo of the entity, because if you're sharing that same image, photo across. So everything remains the same. They change the content inside, and these are easily shareable. And we are seeing that it is becoming increasingly common and frequent and rampant in the states we operate in, because that is a very easy way of creating fictitious news and still make people believe that it is genuine, because it comes with it is very common that you see such
attribution for a reputable source. I see.
Yeah, so you see that e-paper every day, so you believe, okay, fine, they may have written this. So very few people have the wherewithal to go to that link. If you open that, so there is also a link given at the bottom. If you open that link, you will know that it is not genuine, because on the link the actual news is something else. But very few people have that. So this is the trend that we are increasingly seeing here, which I don't think is happening in other parts of the country. So it is very unique to the place we live in. And like I said, because of the lower bar, that you just need to know how to edit. You don't need any sophisticated skills, but you can create any kind of fictional story out of it.
Rakesh, some critics would argue that fact-checking alone is not enough to address the scale of misinformation in India or actually in any country. How could this problem be addressed in a more holistic way from your point of view?
Like I told you, fact checking is not a silver bullet solution. Whenever whoever asks me, I tell the same thing. Fact checkers are no gods, and fact checking is not the only thing that will help solve this problem. We need multitude of efforts from multiple stakeholders. So, for instance, I would say, so at the end of the day, how do you develop this habit of questioning? At the end of the day, it's questioning. Don't believe in things that come across your way easily. So it is, how do we cultivate this habit of I'm not saying doubting everything, but being very rational and logical. Of course, you'll have to get over ideology, get over biases, and all that and that has to start very young. So, which means you will have to start cultivating these habits at a school level, making them realize, start questioning what to believe, what not to believe. A lot of digital literacy. So, for instance, one thing that we missed the bus in India, I believe, is there is some form of financial digital literacy, but not media literacy. And of course, state also has the role to play, especially claims that can have real world harm outside. So have to be dealt with very, very seriously. So state has to be very responsive. So especially in situations where there is a law and order issue, where there is physical attacks on people, you have to be very, very swift in giving clarifications, in saying this is what happened, this is the factual matter, making information available. So state has a role to play there, proactive information sharing. And of course, fact checkers have a role, though it is not debunking and debunking later. I think all of this has to come together. You cannot expect one wing to say we are doing it. And platforms, of course, platforms become the major distribution channels. So they have to employ multiple methods from whatever we have seen to ensure that the proliferation does not happen.
Let's talk a little bit about business side of your website. So how would you describe your business and revenue model?
We are a mix of a product company as well as a service company. So we get, like I said, our partnership with Meta, we provide services, we get some revenue. We also get some grants from various, like I was telling you, the IFCN grant and other grant opportunities. We are part of certain coalitions. On the other side, we are also proactively building products, so where we make revenue by selling subscriptions to our products. Which is what we are focusing on and diversifying, so that the reliance on the first part reduces over time.
Because again, a lot of websites like yours, they heavily depend on grants. So let's say if all the grants will stop today, how percentage-wise, how much do you get from your products or from something you produce yourself? So can you be sustainable, or you're working towards that sustainability?
So it is work in progress. I'm not saying we are sustainable today without partnerships on the other side, but it is work in progress. But we very soon, in the next 1-2 years, we are confident that we'll get there.
Do you use Gen AI tools to help you to reimagine your business model?
So very, very definitely. So which is why I said when we were also ideating our products, so we had a lot of knowledge about data, official data. So we built ideas around them. The moment Gen AI happened and technology became more accessible, we re-engineered our ideas to include Gen AI. So in fact, we were very nimble and agile to say, okay, fine, there are these ideas that we are working on. How can we include Gen AI so that they become more effective? So we have done that, from the beginning of when ChatGPT came onto the scene, burst onto the scene, and Gen AI became increasingly available to people. So that we have done. We were not very stuck to one product and saying we won't change and this is how it will be. But we tried and made wherever possible AI a part of our products. I'm not saying just for the sake of it. There is also an argument that why are you adding AI when it is not required? So that we don't do. Wherever we believe that it has a role to play, wherever it can add value, only there we're using it.
Can you share with us some examples which you actually tested, tried maybe as a newsroom, how you actually use the tools to maybe think with you or to come up with a model for sustainable model for tomorrow?
So, for instance, I'll tell you a little about our Gen AI product that we're building, which we launch next month. So, for instance, in India, there is the official information is given in multiple forms. One of the major official data comes from our parliament questions and answers. So in parliament, the members of parliament keep asking questions, the government gives answers and gives a lot of data as part of these answers. A lot of them very rare data, which is not available elsewhere, very up-to-date data. The parliament websites do have a search option where you can go find answers to it, etc., etc. But it is a very tedious thing and it is very difficult to navigate, and you have to be a pro at it. You have to get used to it. So what we're doing is we have now curated databases like that. For example, about 2 million question and answers since our independence, about 500,000 official releases from the government. So about 20,000 odd curated standardized clean datasets. All of them have been made into one single database. So now, so anybody who is researching on a particular topic wants to understand how a law has come about. What is the timeline? What is the latest data about this aspect, this part? So all that can be asked as a very generic natural language question. So you don't need to have any extraordinary skills. And because we have built an AI product only on those databases, it will give you the answers. More importantly, with citations from these databases only. So it will not go beyond what is written in those databases. If there is nothing that it finds within those databases, it will say, I don't have anything within the database to answer you. It will give you citations which take you directly to those sources. So this is a very important, a product that can help immensely everybody who is interested in the information ecosystem. right from journalists to researchers to academia to anybody who is in need of official data.
How do you anticipate the change in behavior patterns of news consumption or information searching, for example? So people use an AI assistant instead of Google or TikTok search. How do you anticipate that these patterns will already affecting your website? And what solutions are you discussing with your journalists?
So I think what we will definitely see an increasing behavior change. What I think is there will be a huge segmentation in the user base. So I don't think every user will go to a Perplexity or an OpenAI or a Gemini, etc. There'll be a lot of segmentation. So earlier, everybody who was in need of information would come to Google and start their search there, or maybe go to Google Scholar or Google database search, but 90% of them would come to 95% come to Google search and do. I think there will be an increased segmentation of people. So people who are very good at it, they know what they want. They might go to an engine that can give you a better answer with citations than people who are doing very generic search. They might still go to Google. So I think that segmentation will happen. So I think one of the challenges, and maybe therein lies an opportunity, is how do we ensure that a lot of our information is being cited by these engines. So the case, for example, the OpenAI New York Times case, I think will also signal in what direction this is going. So we constantly see like I told you, we have a data product, for instance. So we get a lot of hits from ChatGPT and Perplexity, people coming from there. So when we see why it is happening, because they might be asking some question about some data, and ChatGPT says this particular product or portal has this data, go there. So I think that is one way where how this evolves, will ChatGPT or somebody start paying money because they're using our information? We don't know. I mean, these are all open questions. I think the important thing that we need to learn is stay relevant. Staying relevant will mean being very agile and not stick to one thing and say we'll do it only this way. If you want to take it, don't see it. We have to change, and I think there is space for everybody. Just that so you have to be very open. And how do you ensure that you're actually addressing problems of certain segment of the user base and not be stuck with old methods and say, I'm doing my way. If people want, let them do, is going to be key. Because, for example, how will SEO evolve? How will technology consumption evolve? These are all open questions. Nobody has an answer to today. I mean, we might have part answers, but some of them might turn out true. Some of them might not turn out true. So I think being open, but at the same time constantly innovating, not for the sake of it, but innovating on your strengths.
Exactly, being with a high adaptability, just you constantly need to adapt and change and be ready to rethink certain things, right? Let's do now blitz questions. I will ask you a short question. You can give me a very short answer. So Rakesh, what is your personal life hack for journalists and storytellers regarding using AI? An advice maybe you could give to yourself.
So one of the personal hacks that I do is, I think before even using AI, always understand what to use AI for, what not to use AI for. If you learn that, you will ace AI. If you have a problem in dealing with that, you'll be in for a difficult time.
What are your three dominant emotions about rapid development of AI?
Excitement, of course, excitement, anxiety, and in some sense, confusion. I know all three cannot exist at the same time, but that's how it is.
They can, and they do exist in so many other people as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The future of journalism, how would you describe it in 3 words?
More personalized, more in-depth, and more creator-led. When I say creator-led, more individual journalistic-led than big media houses.
Yeah, so you as a journalist, as a brand, basically you can be a brand yourself. Actually happening right now, yes. What is your most exciting AI-related project now?
So like I told you, we are building this question answer engine on official curated databases that is been in the works for quite some time, but we are very excited about it, and it's one of the kind of product, and we are very hopeful of the kind of impact it will have.
What would you say to a 15-year-old who still decides who she or he wants to become professionally, and you need to make a case for journalism? What would you say to this girl or boy? Why should they become journalists?
I would say at the end of the day, the world is in search of information, and whatever you see is everybody is in search of information. Information still holds the key. Whether you call it data or information doesn't matter. At least both are one and the same. So if people are running after data and information, only a journalistic profession gives you the best shot to best shot at seeking information and understanding information rather than any other profession.
Ultimately, is it about only access to information or interpretation of this information, or is it also about democracy and
No, I think access to information is the first step in all this. So there is a progression. So obviously you need to get access, then understand, then democratize, then ensure you give the right interpretation to a wide cross section of people who may not have the good fortune of accessing this information.
Can you share with us one name or recent thought-provoking article or research or newsletter you've read about the future of AI that made you think and rethink certain things? Something that surprised you, you thought that, I didn't think about it in that particular way.
I'm in the middle of reading this book called Why Machines Learn by Anil Anandaswamy. So Anil is I think, a science journalist. So he wrote a very detailed book around why machines learn and how do they learn it. So I know it is slightly mathematical and technical and ML, but he puts it very succinctly to tell us that a lot of what we see in AI today are actually rooted in very, very foundational scientific mathematical principles, even some of them which were even found 150 years ago. So he makes those connections right from what happened in 50s and slowly the progression. And it's a very interesting book, by the way. Of course, it is slightly technical, so you will have to have some kind of background in, maybe, I'm not saying advanced mathematics, but to make, because the book also has a lot of equations and all. But it's a very intriguing book on that tells you that while we might tend to think that AI is very, very recent, it's actually not. The foundation principles have always been there, just that because of the way technology and access to these chips has evolved, people have found new ways to use this technology.
Rakesh, and the last one, what is the most exciting and the most hateful part of your job for you personally?
The hateful part is, of course, every day you wake up, there are tons of claims, people still making, these claims, false information. That is a boring part. I mean, every day there's no end to it. There doesn't look like an end to it. But the exciting part is that every day throws a new challenge. So I personally, like, for example, I'm somebody who tries to learn a lot of new things when I don't know. I'm an information seeker in that sense. So for me, every new thing that we discuss during the team meetings, that, okay, we found this, how do we even address this? So those conversations invigorate me. How do we address this? Because every day is a new challenge. So I know that there are some that are very routine, which are, like I said, very boring and not again. But there are some which are actually very exciting. So, and that keeps us going every day.
Rakesh, thank you so much for this conversation and for your thoughts and for your time as well.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this episode where I fluent with me, Ilona Vinogradova, and feel a bit less alone in your newsroom's everyday struggles. This podcast was produced by Love & Films Pro Media Lab. If you would like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Share it with your friends and colleagues if you think they might find it useful or inspirational. And if you really like this podcast, review it on your listening app of choice. It will help us to reach more storytellers and make them feel part of a bigger community. I hope you'll join me next time. Until then, take good care of yourself and each other.